Greetings, I am Dr. Avery Kinley, and this session will focus on the Code of Ethics for Georgia Educators. Our learning targets for this session are to identify the 10 standards of the Georgia Code of Ethics and to assess which standards would be applied giving some sample scenarios. So as we look at the difference between rules and ethics, rules are the policies that are enacted by organizations. Ethics are simply those moral principles that should guide our decision making. And so rules should reinforce ethical values, not restrict them. But rules do offer guidance when making ethical decisions. So what are the Georgia Code of Ethics for Educators? The Code of Ethics for Educators defines the professional behavior of educators in Georgia and serves as a guide to ethical conduct. There are different types of disciplinary actions and consequences that could occur. So we start with a warning. The warning could be within the school site or it could be district-based, and then there's a reprimand. Again, both of those could be in writing. Both of those lead to simply cautions. They may not actually go toward the Georgia Board of Ethics, but they result in cautions. Then we can have a suspension, and that would lead to an invalidation of your certificate. Upon entry, an individual could be denied, and again, that denial would not allow them to earn a teaching certificate. And finally, your certificate could be revoked, which indicates an invalidation of your certificate for a certain period of time. That period of time could extend from 3 months to 6 months to even longer. So the 10 standards of conduct under the Georgia Code of Ethics for Educators. Standard 1 is legal compliance. Standard 2 is conduct with students. Standard 3, alcohol or drugs. Standard 4, honesty. Standard 5, public funds and property. Standard 6, remunerative conduct. Standard 7, confidentiality. Standard 8, required reports. Standard 9, professional responsibilities. And Standard 10, testing. So to review the pre-assessment that you completed prior to watching this video, the first question, which of the following is not considered a disciplinary action by the Professional Standards Commission? And now that we've reviewed those standards, we know that the answer is censure. Next question, in the event you are arrested, you must report this arrest to the Professional Standards Commission. And that answer is actually no. Now, if you are asked by an administrator or you are asked by the district if you have been arrested, you must indicate or you must plead the fifth. And so you cannot lie. So it's very important that if you are arrested and something does happen and you are asked, that you do not lie about it. Of course, you can decide that you prefer not to divulge that information, but you are not to lie about it. If you lie about it, then you would be in violation of Standard 4, which deals with honesty. Our next question, which of the following is not one of the 10 standards in the Georgia Code of Ethics? And that answer is public sovereignty. Whom can you not discuss individual student information? It's a very interesting one. And so the answer for this one is custodians and secretaries. And the way that we understand how we can discuss student information is those individuals that are directly in contact with their educational progress. So those individuals that have a directed interest in their educational progress. And so custodians and secretaries, you should not discuss student information about your class with those individuals. So let's review our 10 standards. Standard 1, an educator shall abide by federal, state, and local laws and statutes. Unethical conduct includes but is not limited to the commission or conviction of any felony or crime involving moral turpitude, any criminal offense involving a controlled substance or marijuana, any sexual offense specified in Code Section 16, and any laws applicable to the profession. Standard 2, conduct with students. An educator should always maintain a professional relationship with all students, both in and outside the classroom. Now, can you be arrested for cursing at students? Well, the answer is yes. That constitutes what's called disturbing the peace. And though the laws can vary state from state, in the state of Georgia, you could be arrested for cursing at students. So be very mindful of that when you're in the classroom. Now, how do we define a student? This is very important. A student is defined as anyone between the ages of 3 and 18, or a student enrolled in grades pre-K to 12 in a public or private school. So if you graduate, but you are not yet 18, you can still be deemed a student. Also, if you are in school, remember it says a student in a public school. So if you have passed the age of 18, but you are still enrolled in school, you are still considered a student. Now, sexual relationships with students. Sexual assault by persons with supervisory or disciplinary authority falls under Standard 2. And for any of those sexual assaults, here are the punishments. From age 16 and up, 1 to 25 years of jail with a fine of $100,000. Under the age of 16, 25 to 50 years. Now, we are all mandated or mandatory reporters, so any teacher, counselor, or administrator receiving a report or sexual misconduct shall submit a written report within 24 hours. And so whether that report is in email or in a written form, it's best to have it in email, so you do have a copy of it. You are to submit that report within 24 hours. Now, it's best to submit it immediately, but you have to submit it within 24 hours. And that report should be submitted to your principal. Be friendly, but not a friend. So watch your interactions with social media, also when talking with other colleagues, and interacting when you are taking pictures or celebrating with students. It's always good to be friendly, but understand you are not to be their friend. Choose appropriate settings. So be very careful in regards to inviting students to your house. Also within the classroom, it's also advised if you have a student in your classroom that there are multiple individuals there with you, especially if it is before or after school. And finally, do not offer students rides. Let's move to Standard 3, alcohol or drugs. An educator shall refrain from the use of alcohol or illegal or unauthorized drugs during the course of professional practice. Standard 4, an educator shall exemplify honesty and integrity in the course of professional practice. Standard 5, public funds and property. An educator entrusted with public funds and property shall honor that trust with a high level of honesty, accuracy, and responsibility. So some of you may be over a particular club or program or group, or you may even collect funds for the distribution of lockers. Even in that, you are entrusted to ensure that you turn in that money as appropriate and as defined by your school. Remunerative conduct. An educator shall maintain integrity with students, colleagues, parents, patrons, or businesses when accepting gifts, gratuities, favors, and additional compensation. And this simply means that you cannot get paid outside of your normal salary for any services that you may render, even if you're tutoring for the SAT, ACT, if you are a coach and you have a side business where you may be coaching athletes, or you have a dance studio, whatever it may be. Again, for the students that you are serving, you are not to accept funds for those students for what you would be doing in your normal professional practice. So be very aware of that. Additionally, interacting and accepting gifts. If you do accept gifts, it is important. Obviously, we understand Teacher Appreciation Week, you will get gifts. But if you are giving gifts, understand that the gift should not be in exchange for a particular service. Standard 7, confidential information. An educator shall comply with state and federal laws and state school board policies relating to the confidentiality of student and personnel records, standardized test material, and other information. So you have to maintain confidentiality with the records of each student that you are teaching. You are not to divulge information outside of those individuals that are directly impacting their educational performance and progress, or their parents or guardians. This can include any health services provided, any individual student performance data, school records of students with disabilities, and the student's education record. Standard 8, required reports. An educator shall file reports of a breach of one or more of the standards in the Code of Ethics for Educators. That includes child abuse or any other required report. And as stated previously, you must file that report in writing, and that must be done within 24 hours. Standard 9, professional conduct. An educator shall demonstrate conduct that follows generally recognized professional standards and preserves the dignity and integrity of the teaching profession. So as you engage with other educators and your peers that you work with, it's very important to remain professional and to exhibit professional conduct. Standard 10, testing. An educator shall administer state-mandated assessments fairly and ethically. You will go through training on how to administer the Georgia Milestones Assessment or any other standardized test that students will be given. Within that training, you will be asked to sign off that you understand all of the components and requirements for administering those assessments. In that effort, you acknowledge that you will not violate this Standard 10, which deals with testing. Here are a couple of major test violations: breach of test security, the failure to provide or attend training, failure to follow the directions specified in the manual. You cannot coach, prompt, alter, or provide answers to students during the test. And then you cannot interpret, explain, or paraphrase test items. So it's very important that you understand that you have to follow the directions specified in the manual, and you are not to coach, prompt, alter, explain, or even paraphrase any of the test question items. Finally, you cannot copy or take notes on test items, and you cannot duplicate prior tests. So in review, our goal was to identify the 10 standards of the Georgia Code of Ethics, and then for you to assess which standard would be applied given sample scenarios. So in the following questions that you will have in this particular module, there will be some sample scenarios that you will be asked to answer and to identify which type of reprimand or consequence would be given based on that scenario. So again, this represents the 10 standards of the Georgia Code of Ethics. I appreciate your time and your attention, and please answer the questions that follow. Thank you.